Good afternoon. I'm Randy Horton from Orthogonal. Welcome to our monthly webinar, Agentic AI for MedTech, from requirements to tested software. We're really excited about this session. We've been doing some really interesting R&D the last year or so that's been building on a lot of work we've done before, and we're excited to share some of this and get feedback from the audience on it. Let me start by introducing our panelists today. Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Graham, VP of Quality Regulatory at Orthogonal.
Yep, and I'm Larkin Lowry. I am CTO of Orthogonal.
Great. So as many of you know, we do these webinars about once a month as a way to really bring together industry thinkers from medical device manufacturers, from our firm, from other services firms to really try and bring you at least several gold nuggets, or as we say, in 1 hour, we're going to try and pack in 4 hours worth of content. This is really intended to be more interactive. So if you have questions, submit them along the way. We'll try and incorporate them. We'll also do Q&A at the end. But we really try and make it so we can get you the value you are looking for. Two things, we really value your feedback on this. So please, if we reach out after the webinar, if we reach out, we'd love to hear from you about what you thought about this webinar, how we could make it better, and what we might do in future ones. And the second point, which we don't love to do, but we were told we really needed to, is to actually tell you just a minute or two about Orthogonal. People said it was weird to come to a webinar. We're not here to sell you, but just so you have some context for what we do, we got into this business to improve software outcomes faster. The way we do it is by working with companies building medical device software to help them accelerate the development of software as a medical device, pure play software devices, and connected device systems, as well as larger medical ecosystems that include medical devices. And the way we do that is by taking the best of modern product management and software engineering tools and techniques that have really come out of the tech industry and impacted many other industries and let things move really fast and effectively, and applying it to MedTech in a way that's sort of fusing it with MedTech's fundamental focus on safety and effectiveness as actuated by laws, regulations, standard quality compliance, and use that as a way to not just build cooler devices, more powerful devices faster, but actually to fundamentally raise the bar on safety and effectiveness. We think that the way that modern software is built, when it's built well, actually is incredibly compatible with MedTech's focus on safety and effectiveness. It needs some special doing to bring those worlds together, but we believe it's a really powerful way and that we'll be able to do a lot more for our patients in the medical device space. As we like to say, move faster and break nothing. We will never move as fast as a place that doesn't mind breaking things. We don't have that option because the thing we break in our industry is a human being. And with a connected device, of course, the risk is you break human beings at scale. But our goal is let's move as fast as we can responsibly. And we think that's a lot faster, even 2 to 3x now, particularly in the age of agentic AI and a lot of the other technologies that have come out the last few years. So with that, we're going to kind of do a quick introduction and have a conversation today. So let me start with a premise, and I'll throw it out to Megan and Larkin. Humans are vague and imprecise, as is life. Life is vague and imprecise. That's always been a challenge for software, right? That's my question.
Yes, I'm actually very excited about today's topic because I think it addresses one of the very difficult things in software product, but also medical device, is specification of the requirements. How do you know what the expected behavior is? How do you know what the product needs to do? And in my many years in medical device industry, we've tackled this a few different ways, all different kinds of ways of doing that, including formal specification of requirements. So something where, we use different techniques to be very, very specific that look in a way that looks a lot more like code. And so what we're talking about today, I'm very excited to see that come full circle in the age of agentic AI and agents in the medical device but also in the medical device processes. So that's what I'm super excited about today as a way to potentially address that very significant challenge.
Excellent. Larkin.
Yeah, so from the engineers and developer side, right? How many times have we heard an engineer say, "Well, what does this requirement really mean? What am I supposed to do about this?" Right? And for decades, companies have been hiring engineers and developing cultures where people just kind of get it, right? You can give them a somewhat of a vague requirement, and they just, implicitly know like what should be built. And so, how can you test that? How can you test that they actually built something, that was intentional when the sort of the fine details of that specification are just tacit, it's cultural, it's that tribal knowledge, right? You can't test that. So yeah, so this topic today is really about how do we specify these requirements in a very precise way that allows them to also be machine readable. And when I say machine, we are going to talk about test automation, but also how the AI agents can use this structure to do their work more effectively. Because, like I said, right, if your company relies on developing an engineering culture, the agent's not part of that culture. It doesn't know your culture. It doesn't know your norms, your conventions. It doesn't know any of that. And you have to be very explicit and you have to tell it specifically. And that's where these worlds are colliding right now. And it's actually turning out to be very excellent. And we're excited to tell you about it.
So let me ask a facetious question to make one final point. I mean, it's not that hard for business people and engineers. I mean, business people say what they want and the engineers code it, and then you just give the code back to the business people to read it and make sure it's right. Right. I mean, isn't that how it's always worked really well?
Yeah, sure.
But that's been the dynamic, right? Is where does the software live? Is it live in
Well, yeah. I mean, you think
the
about
software? How do you check it, right? How do you
yeah. So like if you look at what I'd say like looser agile practices and even the vibe coding that is occurring today with agents, it really is a let's code something, try it. If we're not happy with it, let's document or describe what we're not happy about and change it again and keep iterating and iterating until we stop finding things that we're not happy about. And that's the way things often work outside of the medical device space because they have that luxury. They can fail in the marketplace if they want to. But within our industry, we have to be a bit more careful about that.
We'll talk another time about companies that want to fail in the marketplace. I like that phrase. Okay, so with all of that, Larkin, tell us about the epiphany we've had and why it turns out to pat ourselves on the back. We've actually been doing the right thing for years, and it's actually really laid the foundation for leveraging these new AI tools.
Right. So for many, many years, Orthogonal has been utilizing fully and promoting the Gherkin syntax, which is part of the Cucumber framework of it's a testing library that originally came out of the Java world that then just exploded and has been adopted by really every software engineering framework. And it is a syntax that allows you to describe a feature and that is the main unit of definition for Gherkin. And within a feature, you're describing generally, what it is, right? You'll maybe even include your SRS statements, potentially even some information from your user need as just information. But ultimately, the Gherkin feature file is broken up into a number of scenarios. And the scenarios define exactly what the expectation is for this feature. How does the user experience it, right? And so this methodology is called behavior-driven development. We are modeling user behavior, and we're using that to drive our development processes, our specifications, and whatnot, and even our testing, right? So the Gherkin specification for a scenario is broken into three types of statements. Your initial statement is a given, right? These are your initial conditions that exist before the user takes an action. There's a when clause, which is describing the action that the user is going to take. So you might say, given they are on the patient portal, when they click on the patient chart, and then there's a then statement, which describes what the action of the system should be. And this is what you're going to test and verify. So it'll say, then the patient chart loads in a modal or something like that. And what this is allowing the system to do is understand what is the condition when the user is having their experience and their behavior. What does it look like? What are they trying to do? Where are they in the system? What screen are they on, et cetera? And then you're declaring very specifically in the when, well, what is it that they're actually doing? Are they clicking on something? Are they typing into a keyboard? Are they speaking into a microphone? And then you're giving the 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 viewer, the reviewer of this Gherkin, very specific details on exactly what they need to look for in the system's behavior and the response to that stimulus to judge whether or not it did it correctly. So it turns out that this natural language structure is something that can be read by multiple disciplines. It can be read by product owners. It can be read by quality engineers. It can be read by software engineers. It can be run by our test automation engineers. And everybody is able to read and understand it. But another thing that's important is it can be read by test automation frameworks like Playwright, Appium, for example. They're able to consume this exact same content to actually execute materialized automated tests to verify the functionality. But it also turns out the AI LLMs are really, really good at Gherkin. And we have found that it has been an incredibly successful pattern for us to employ Gherkin with our Agentic workflows because the agents are actually trained very heavily on Gherkin. They're able to write Gherkin very well and effectively. They're able to audit and review Gherkin for consistency and accuracy and effectiveness. And they're able to plug that Gherkin into test automation. So it turns out this methodology and this syntax from 10 plus years ago is turning out to be a nugget of gold for us in the agentic age.
So basically, Gherkin is that sweet spot between letting humans talk, read, and think like humans, but with structure on it that's not so structured you have to be an engineer. And on the other hand, having enough structure that a machine can read it and derive business logic or code from it. Yes?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And I just to add that, you know, as I think about how that plays out in the medical device processes, I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We have all these different perspectives. You have a cross-functional team involved in the development process. Each has a different independent view. And so having that language, I think it opens up real possibilities for creating better software.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, well, let's dive in then and show people a little bit of this language. The assumption here is that you have not seen Gherkin before. Maybe you've heard a little bit about it, but we're going to sort of take it from the top with feeling. But quickly, assuming the people here are fairly sophisticated in terms of technology, you've seen many, so you'll pick up pretty quickly. Which is, by the way, kind of the point of Gherkin in the first place, right?
All right, so give me a second to get to where I can share a window. And why is Zoom being difficult?
Quick reminder to the audience, please send us your questions as we go. I can really try to prompt Larkin with them so we can address them when they come up.
All right, so hopefully this is visible. So we're going to talk about life beyond code assist. We're all very familiar with using tools like Copilot and, well, actually, let's just leave it at Copilot and Cursor and some of the other tools like that for providing inline code assistance to developers. We're going to talk about something very different and really what 2026 has been about. So here we are. Agents are now the default. We're not doing code assist anymore. Nobody really cares about that. Because what happened in late 2025 is the emergence of not just simple coding agents. So last year we did have coding agents that would do simple things. You would say, add this function, create this file. It was very narrowly scoped. What we're now doing is completely rejiggering the unit of work that the agents are working on. It's not working on a specific task that a software developer is giving the agent. We're giving it large chunks. It could be an entire Jira story. So we're no longer thinking about an agent that's creating, various lines of content in a source code file, we're actually giving it the job of creating source code files, making edits, doing refactors across dozens of files, integrating a new component into an entire system, running it, running the full test suite for it, even creating pull requests. So the agent can do its code development all by itself, submit a pull request for it for human review to be incorporated in the code base, right? It's much more autonomous than what we had last year. And what's made this really interesting is that our interactions with the agent are very different, right? We've gone from giving it specific instructions, make this change here, make that change there, add this file or whatnot, to really having a lot of structure within our interactions with the agents to make sure that they're actually following the procedures that we've laid out in our process. And because these agents are able to run for extended periods of time, they can run for several hours, they can run overnight. We would need to be able to make sure that 3 hours in, that it doesn't make some catastrophic mistake and then spend all night long compounding that mistake to where we get up in the morning and have to go make a lot of corrections. So that's a very different dynamic than what we had just last year. And then finally, the developer's job is very different. Instead of sort of curating code and like managing things at an individual file and source code function level, the developer's job is really shifting to shaping what the code must do. What is the objective of the code change that is being made? What is the outcome of it rather than what are the syntactic details of it? So this is now the world that we're living in. It's a big shift from where we were 12 months ago, and who knows where we're going to be 12 months from now. So
Wait,
here's a
let me
little bit of
jump
a
in for a second. So you're
yeah.
actually saying that Copilot and its peers are so Q3 2025?
So Copilot has developed a lot of agentic tooling. We're using Claude Code right now because we get some additional advantages with that platform versus, say, GitHub's Copilot. There are still good opportunities to use tools like Cursor and Windsurf and some others. But generally, what we're looking for is agentic tooling where it's in a way decoupled from the source code now. We're really operating at more of the objective and outcome level than we are at individual code functions, classes, or UI components.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have, a timeline here. I think we all remember what autocomplete was before AI. We started with ChatGPT, getting into LLMs suggesting code. Then we ended up with tools like Copilot, where it's actively suggesting code. And then, last year we were getting, single agent tasks where, like I mentioned, go edit this file, go edit that file. But right now, the you are here is really the supervised agent workflows where we're giving large chunks of work to do for the agent, and we are supervising the agent. We're not using the agent to help us. We're using the agent to actually do the work. We're inspecting the output of its work and judging its validity. Did it do the right thing? Is it correct? Versus give me something that I can use and that I can put into the code base. And of course, next year, we're going to, or late, who knows, a month from now, really get deeper into multi-agent spec-driven delivery, where we're actually taking a further step back, a higher level than we have been. But, what's absolutely true is that MedTech can't ignore this, right? This is a reality. It's going to get worse, I guess you could say, in that it's going to get more agentic, more AI driven. And so the thing that matters most to us is how do we control it and how do we manage these systems under the constraints that we have.
Megan, are you ready to go like on behalf of Claudine regulatory timeout, like
I'm gonna always take the quality regulatory person. It depends, right? So, I, you know, I think that this is not to say that we throw controls, design controls, regulations out the door. I think this is exactly an opportunity for us to build safety in more directly and explicitly. Our current process, I mean, it doesn't, the human doesn't go away. The human needs to know what they're doing, right? They need to understand how to review the output and make sure it's good. They need to know what that means, what they're looking for. That doesn't go away. That becomes actually more important. The opportunity is actually to build in more of those guardrails from the very beginning and have it in a what I love the most is the language is human readable, it's understandable as opposed to some very, very complex requirements that are very difficult to do. So this makes me very excited. Of course, does it have to work? Yes. Do we still have to have the experienced, to know what good looks like? Yes, that doesn't change. But I do think this helps us do that job better.
Yeah, and here's why Megan's concerns are completely valid, right? So I just want to just touch on this briefly in that these LLMs and the agents that employ them are built for a very different kind of person, the different developer, right? They're largely meant for a model where you have one person operating in one repo. They've got all that context in their head, and they're just gonna try to get something cranked out, right? They're totally cowboy. They're vibe coding it. They're just seeing if it works. They're iterating on it, sort of like what I was describing before. And all of their intent, what they're trying to achieve, is really just context spread out in a chat log. But that chat log doesn't last forever. All of the LLMs have a context window that is limited. And at a certain point, the older parts of your chat are either thrown away or are compacted and summarized in a way where you really just lose all of that context and information. Um, and ultimately, the target person here is somebody who's just really going to be, say, hey, it works for me, right? This is a tool that I'm going to use, or whatever, right? So, this is not actually bad, right? This is really helping a lot of people develop a lot of very interesting ideas quickly, but it is not something that anybody who would ever need to sit in a design review is going to tolerate, right? Because Megan would absolutely, uh, you know, well, I would use the word that I would use if this was not polite company, but she would do mean things to me. Let's just say that. So yeah,
Would agree.
so but as we tie all of these things together, this is the threat that we're modeling, right? This is the agent's tendency, right? When we think about agent factors, this is a behavior trait of the LLMs that is trying to satisfy this user more than any other.
I want to add another piece that I was thinking about earlier, Larkin, when you were describing very explicitly the syntax is written in the perspective from the perspective of the user. And I think a lot of times when we're developing complex systems, I think the user gets lost in that. And then we have human factors, we have activities to help with that, but it brings it more directly into that. And when you're aligning the product functionality with how it's actually used, you're more likely to get high quality by design. So that's another
Right.
aspect I think that's really helpful is that user perspective.
So let's talk about sort of a little bit more about the different failure modes that we get from these agents. So one is, as I was describing, it's trying to be helpful for the vibe coder who's just trying to iterate. So the bulk of the training that these agents have is on practices that are completely incompatible with design controls. The agents basically want to treat code as the source of truth. It always wants to modify the code first, and then if you insist and you really push it, it will actually update the documentation to reflect. But it won't typically read the documentation, right? It's really oriented around the code is the code. The code is what it does, and that's the intent. The intent is encoded in the code. And you can give it instructions to say, no, 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 I've got these requirements. You have to follow my requirements. And it will do that for a little while, but eventually that context fades away in the context memory, and it will just simply stop doing it and will revert to going back to just trying to modify the code first. But there's an advantage here, which is that the agents do try to do things which can check and verify the code. So it will run compiler checks to make sure the code will compile. It'll run linters to make sure that whatever code rules you have, code style rules you have are being enforced. It will run your unit tests. It loves to run unit tests. And and it uses these checks to check its own work to make sure that it is valid. So that's actually an advantage that we have. But this third item is really the danger, and that is when you have one agent that has the ability to mutate both the code and the documentation, it's a recipe for disaster. And so I have here at the bottom, one of the triggers that really got us into some of these controls that we're going to talk about is where the agent basically left a note in a requirement saying, well, this is clearly out of scope because the code doesn't do it right now. And our intent was, no, 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 we want you to code to the requirements and add the function. But yet its attitude was, well, the code is the code and it's correct. And so the documentation must be wrong. And it went and it decided to update the requirement. So that was clearly a bad behavior that we decided we had to find a way to protect against.
It reminds me of a company I worked at once where the users reported the search feature in this application isn't working, and developer said no problem, and they took out the search feature.
Exactly. So, all right. We don't want to constrain the agents. We want to take full advantage of what they're capable of, and they're capable of quite a lot. That's very valuable. We don't want to put them on a short leash. We want to give them a long leash, but we want to control it. So one of the key ways to do that, and as Randy led with earlier, is we don't want to be vague in what we're communicating to the robot. We want to make sure that we're being very precise, but precise in a way that's enforceable. So as I was mentioned in the last slide, right, it likes to run tests. Well, guess what? We plug in our Gherkin into test automation. That means that the agent has the ability to leverage the Gherkin when the Gherkin is driven from the requirements. So it's sort of like a way of tricking the agent into actually conforming to our documentation. But, and you'll have to forgive me, this is just me and my sense of humor creating an AI generated video, but this is me showing how the Gherkin is able to keep the Claude coding agent in check. So just bear with me.
You can write the code after you've written the tests.
But I want to write it now.
Okay, so hopefully the audio came through, did it?
Spirit fingers. That was great.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, again, that's just me and my sense of humor. But really, what we're trying to do is make sure that Claude has to eat its vegetables and actually use the requirements that we have in hand. Here's an example of a Gherkin scenario that is somewhat amusing to us in that we are using Gherkin to define the tooling that enforces that Gherkin has to be used by the agent. Hence, declaring it somewhat self-referential. But it's a key control of ours that we're instructing and controlling the agent such that when it does detect a conflict with requirements, that it identifies that conflict, and instead of taking action to modify the requirement as it might otherwise want to do, that instead it's appending an entry to an open questions file. And then it's alerting the human that there are open questions that have to be resolved. So this would be a case where it's trying to implement and satisfy the requirement. It can't for some other reason. Maybe the requirements are in conflict or something's not specific enough. And it now is adding that open question item that the human can resolve. And once the human updates and answers the open question, then the agent is then free to then continue the build. So, but as I described before, we have the givens, the whens, and the thens, and this is a syntax that is human readable, it's machine readable, and the agents actually love it, and they will behave themselves and follow it, believe it or not.
I like this rule in particular because it makes me think if you've ever done any kind of design verification, any kind of testing, there's been that moment where you're identifying a behavior that is not what's expected and you're trying to understand what's the right answer. Is it the test that's wrong? Is it the software that's wrong? Is it the requirement that's wrong? And so I like the idea of this generating that list of, okay, these are not matching, not calling it as one is correct, but letting the human decide what's the correct path. That's kind of like anomaly management in medical device. So I like that particular rule.
And so let's talk about where Gherkin fits in this model. And so my model here is a little bit different. I'm not including things like risk management and other things that we would normally have to do. This is just a more compact way for demonstration purposes. But ultimately at the top of the stack, we have user and business needs. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the goal with this product or feature? What I have here listed under design constraints and decisions might sometimes be considered or called a PRS or a PRD, product requirements. So here we're documenting what constraints do we have that are immutable that we can't change. And then we have also our design decisions that are basically the things that the team is working through to decide together. Should there be a mobile app? Should there be a web portal? If it's a web portal, what's the layout? Like, all of the typical things that you would put in a PRS. From that, we then are producing our software requirements, and each requirement needs to be completely atomic and individually testable using the EARS methodology, as we all know and love. One of the things, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of this later, is that we're using an interviewing technique to actually help us build user needs and the design constraints and decisions and software requirements, where the agent will actually ask us questions to clarify our intent. And we're able to iterate with the agent to produce those various needs and requirements. And it's actually very helpful to use the interviewing method for that. But the point here is that from the software requirements, we're going to produce Gherkin. The AI agents are really good at taking those software requirements and automatically producing Gherkin. We'll go in and manually tune them and make some amount of adjustment. They're not perfect, but it gives us a 80% first draft of the Gherkins. We're also including interface contracts because that's also something that we need to control and has to be testable. So that's thus we're lumping that together in with the Gherkin. And then the code is just a byproduct. And this is the most awkward and yet powerful point here. And we'll get to that a little more detail when we talk about doing spikes. But this is where we see Gherkin fitting in to the overall stack. Okay, so some of the controls that we've had to put in place, some of them are actually kind of fun to talk about. We had to create right separation. As I mentioned, we don't want the agents writing requirements unless we're actually working with an agent specifically dedicated to writing requirements. We want the coder agent not to be able to do that. And it's limited to only appending items to the question list. It can't overwrite them or change them. So we had to put in a lot of gates in place to very much control the coder agent's ability to modify or mutate any document in the document set. Read separation was equally important. So we had a number of documents, and just for example, the domain model, where the agent would tend to take some of these documents a little too literally, where our intent with the document is to provide high-level conceptual framing, where the robot would, and by the way, I keep saying robot, whenever I say robot, you have to think I'm talking about the AI agents. But it would take that conceptual domain model and literally try to materialize it as SQL database tables and whatnot. So we had to constrain what documentation the coder agent can actually read, and use. Obviously, approval gates. So we do have agents that are able to collaborate with us on developing user needs and the requirements, but we have gates in place such that the actual mutation of those files has to have a human approval for it, right? So we can't, so we're not having the agent try to sneak in some changes that we have not fully approved and accepted. The final one is the most exciting one for me, and that is we spent a lot of time working out all of the methods that the agents can use to jailbreak this entire system, right? So we have as a principle that any safety controls, any security controls, or even process controls that we have in place cannot be bypassed without going through a specific and defined procedure. And that procedure obviously has to have an appropriate set of approvals and audit trails and whatnot. But the agents, because they're able to execute arbitrary code, they can create their own code files. They can check stuff in to a repo and run pull request, modify pull request tests, and run things in your CI/CD pipeline that can actually disable the controls that we've put in place. So we had to spend a lot of time to figure out all of the different ways that the agent could find to jailbreak its way to bypass these controls. And it's not that the agent is trying to be malicious or devious. It's just that the agents are trying to be as helpful as possible. And if it has a unit of code that's not passing the linter, it will often say, well, the linter rule is wrong, and I'm going to go change the linter rule so that my code will then be clean. Or it'll, if a test is failing, it's like, well, I need to modify the test in order to make it not fail. And so it has certain bad habits like that. And that's what the tamper resistance is about, is that it's trying to be helpful. We just need to make sure that it can't find a way to bypass any of the controls that we've put in place.
This is really important because this is a question that the FDA asks manufacturers, is how do you know that your AI-enabled medical device isn't going to be tampered with? And similarly, how do you know that the tools that you're using in your development process actually work? So this approach helps to build out evidence and having that proof of concept that you can build out constraints on the agents to help demonstrate and actually have happen that reduced risk of the jailbreaking of the unintended consequence or unintended behavior.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I mentioned spikes before. I'm going to just touch on this. This, I think, can be an entire webinar of its own. We don't always know exactly what we want. And this is really the principle of Agile, right? Agile says you don't know what you want. You need to test it in the marketplace first. So these sets of controls that we have for the agents really makes it unfriendly for doing an experimental spike, doing a POC. If you're doing usability testing, you want to tweak the UI or some bit of functionality. So we have a provision for having a spike branch where the code enforcement rules are lifted, but all of the document set gates are still enforced. So they can't make any changes in use documentation, design requirements, whatever, right? So the idea here is that you do your experiments in your spike, you test them, you do whatever usability testing. You might go to a focus group, you might do some formative testing on it, you might, ask a physician, hey, what do you think? And when you're done with the spike, rather than trying to figure out how to merge the spike code back into your main code branch, we're actually using the agents to look at the difference. What is different in the spike versus the code branch that it came from? And then it infers, did we add any new needs? Did we discover any new user needs? Did we change how we think about a user need, or are we deprecating a user need? Have we taken away functionality because the user need is no longer valid? Have we introduced any new requirements? Have we changed a requirement, right? So the agent is able to create essentially a documentation change set of this is what you need to change to your documentation set in order to reproduce this spike result. And so now instead of pulling over the code from the spike, we're pulling over the documentation that describes the spike, applying that, of course, through after human review into our main code branch, and we're throwing the spike away, and we're building now from the documentation the functionality that the spike had described. This is actually a pretty powerful concept. I could probably do an entire webinar on it on that, but just wanted to mention this because the ability to do these spikes is really important for product development. Quick point, this should be cheaper, and I'll tell you why. We've observed that it is cheaper to do using Gherkin versus other techniques for constraining the agents. And so the reason is that because Gherkin is structural, it's constraining in the language and the structure of how you're creating your test cases, and even really as a way to describe requirements. It allows the agent and the LLM to converge on a solution faster. It has fewer bits of ambiguity to resolve. Things are more correlated and coherent. And so it theoretically should reduce and lower token spend on your agentic activities, and we've seen that. But however, we've not done the formal testing for us to be able to say, yes, it's absolutely true, and this is how much, and yes, it's true across all agents, or only Claude, or only GPT, whatever. But this is just a happy accident that this also turns out to be something that would make all of this a bit more economical. So I want to show a demo, and so the demo is a little video about they're showing a POC Claude skill where it will interview the user to help define essentially what your product concept is, and its output is Gherkin feature files. And then we're going to show a one-shot build based only on the Gherkin feature files, what our product concept is, and I'm going to show you what it actually built for me. So this is the initial prompt that I'm giving it. That's all of the initial context, and I wanted to be something silly and fun. So this is a clinical decision support system for patients to use to assess the severity of their funny bone injury. And I'm giving it a lot of instruction here to make sure that it's continuing to be funny, and this is a parody and just meant to be kind of silly. But I'm just basically telling it, here's my concept for this product, and it's supposed to go inside of my patient portal just for fun. This is all that I'm giving it. So let me shift over. Hopefully this video plays, and I will give some voiceover as it's going along. But this is VS Code. I've loaded my prompt into Claude Code, and it is now chewing through it. It's loading various files with its the skill definition, which describes the interview process and other controls for the methodology that it's going to be following as part of this skill. But shortly, as it's thinking about things, it's going to ask us to review the process that we're going to follow. So as you can see, here it's describing this is how it's going to flow, one question at a time. It's going to give me options. It's going to look for boundary conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And it's also giving us a restatement of the vision for this funny bone triage assistant. And it's asking us, did it capture the intent correctly? And so hopefully I'll type yes, and it will move on. So that would be your opportunity to say, no, I meant something slightly different. And you can provide corrections and iterate on it until its statement is reflecting your true intent. So here it's asking me a question. Are there any other persons involved in this other than the patient that bonked their elbow? And so for this purpose, just the patient, nobody else is involved in any of this. And we're going to move on. Give it a second. Okay, next question. Okay, so if they walk away, or what do they walk away with when they finish a session, right? So do they want just a single joke severity, or also that plus a recommendation? I like the recommendation angle. I don't think it has to be more complicated than that for this demo. Now it wants to know more about what the actually do with it. Okay, so how do we tell the assistant about our elbow bonk, right? So I like the multiple choice. It's a little more easy for a user to follow and demoable versus like picking a number or a slider or something like that. But it's asking us good questions about, how does the user interact with this thing? And let's see, what does the made up severity scale look like, right? So is it a number? Is it just a bunch of names? Is it something else? I didn't want anything number oriented because I think it's hard for people to sometimes gauge ranges like this. So let's just make it a bunch of funny names. Let's see, how many tiers? So in other words, like how complex is this measurement scale are we talking about? And do we have a set of things to pick from? And I said, no, you pick. I want to see what you come up with as a concept. Let's see, which joke tier fits the tone? Okay, so do we want it related to everyday objects, cartoon sound effects, or deadpan clinical parody? I like deadpan. That's my favorite, so I'm going with deadpan. So it's giving us a sense of like what's the user experience, what's the theme field, what's the vibe that the patient is going to have as they're going through this. Multiple choice questions to ask about to determine the Zing grade. So here it's like rather than talking like, how can you describe the kind of tingling you feel in your elbow? Like I felt like it was easier to like measure what your reaction was because it's very much like reflexes. And so I figured, the reflex is going to more correctly reflect the severity of your injury. So I just wanted to measure reflexes. So hopefully I will click that in a second in this video. Go ahead. It's okay. Click it. There we go. I don't know why I had paused originally. All right, I'm not going to bore you with watching the whole thing, but maybe we'll just look at one more question. And then, okay, so here it's asking, how much interviewing do we have to do? How many questions do we have to ask the user before we actually produce a result? Maybe we'll look for one more question because I think I want to show what happens when you click on other because that's actually useful because you can provide it free-form responses that aren't one of the predefined set of options to pick from. Yeah, so here it's the math, right? Are we just averaging numbers or is it the worst of the three? Is it some kind of a sum and, a calculation based upon that? I decided to go with something else, option number 4. So I'm clicking other, and then I'm just going to free-form fill in that I wanted to use a median value as my calculation. So yeah, click, type it in. So I'm providing just my free-form opinion of what I want it to be, and we're off to the races. And so it will accept that answer and act accordingly. Okay, so I'm not going to make you guys continue watching this whole thing. I want to go to show you actually what it outputted. So it took about 25 minutes for me to go through all of the questions. It took maybe 10 minutes to actually build this thing. And so I want to show you what the build looks like. So I'm going to show the build prompt just briefly, and then I'm going to go to my VS Code and show you what this looks like. So the build prompt is basically telling it, only look at the feature files, plus also look at this out of scope document. So as we were going through the interviewing, I might have declined something. I said, no, we don't need to do that, or this is not something that we need to do. So it's documenting things that we did discuss, that we did decide were out of scope and were to be excluded, so that the build agent would not try to invent something, right? But generally speaking, I'm giving it some, let's maybe call them design constraints here that we're not doing any authentication or login of any kind. We're just trying to show this one screen. We're not dealing with any kind of a back end. It's just a single page app, simple client side stuff, telling it that we want to maintain the tone, the silly tone, et cetera. And there's some additional details, but let me jump now to VS Code and see if I can share my screen correctly, which is always a question.
So as Larkin's pulling that up, so basically what we're doing is we're doing the things that look like generating requirements, and we're pulling in user information, and we're asking and it's asking us questions, and we're clarifying and that kind of thing. And that should be familiar to anyone who's done product development, but medical device product development. So
Right. And also keep in mind, this is just like a
pre-design
POC.
control.
Yeah, this is like
Yeah.
a POC, just exploration kind of a workflow here. I in another webinar, I can show you more detail where we're actually generating our user needs and our design decisions and whatnot. But for this, I'm just scoping it simple in this particular case. But as I mentioned, right, it's enumerating out of scope items, things deferred that we might do later, and then just other concepts that we excluded. So let's look at the Gherkin feature file for how we're scoring this funny bone injury. So we have a statement of like, why are we doing this feature? What's the point of it? So here we have a scenario. So given the users open the tool, the user answers that they uttered an audible owl, and answers that they then let's see, user answers a creative word salad for what did you say, and then they did a full arm flail. Then the result is a grade Z3 severe youch, right? And because, and you didn't see this, but I told it, well, you can give it randomized diagnoses or not diagnoses, like recommendations for what to do. And so here it's giving testing. Well, it's got to be one of these two things, right? So it's giving examples within the Gherkin syntax. Here's some additional examples of scenario, right? They pick this kind of yelp. They said that kind of thing. They did this kind of arm shake, and then it produced a grade of such and such, right? So it's providing a set of criteria that the code has to satisfy each and every one of these tests. And this is all fed into the test automation. So the test automation will run each of these individual rows as a separate test. And we will have a verification report that will show the test result for each one of these things. Given these inputs, did it produce the expected output? And so we've got a bunch of other feature files that describe other aspects of like, okay, how do you get there from the portal, whatever that is. And so yeah, anyway, get the idea. It's producing the Gherkin exactly now. And remember, it built this thing only from the Gherkin. Wasn't looking at any other material because there really is no other material other than the Gherkin and the out of scope. So let's see if we can run this thing. So here, what it started out with was modeling out how you would navigate to this thing from a fake patient portal. I could have given it a screenshot of an existing patient portal so that it would match the look and feel, but it just made something up in order to give us a conceptual hint. So I'm going to click the Funny Bone Triage Assistant, and we'll go through this process. And by the way, one of the questions that I had asked was about should we be giving disclaimers and how and where, and so that's why we're seeing disclaimer content up above here. So let's start, and I'm going to say I gave an owl because it hurt, but it wasn't too terrible. Normally, when my wife does it, she wakes the neighbors. Anyway, so what did I say? I'm not the kind of person that says non-printable things. Plenty of people do. I'm more of like just a mild word, because that wasn't that bad of a bang. So what did I do? I do tend to flail my arm around, right? And just try to like shake it off in a way. So I'm going to go with full arm flail. And I want to get my verdict. So my verdict is only a Z2. It's a notable thing, right? So it's not terrible. But, I guess I should hold off on high fives for a few minutes because that might aggravate the condition. So I got my application. It's functional. It doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look exciting either, but it's better than a generic wireframe. And I can go back and do it over again. I can exit out and I get a pop-up. Should I stay and finish it, or just should I leave anyway? And I'm back to my patient portal. So all of this functionality was built only from the feature files. And if the feature files are generated only from the SRS, then essentially we've tricked Claude into building only from the requirements. And that is the punchline. Let's see, I might have another slide or two if we care. Yeah, I just have one little parting slide. Let me just throw that on screen and then Randy can close this out. So I just had a takeaway, right? And the takeaway is agentic development is the floor, right? We're not going back. You're not going to try to shove the toothpaste back in the tube. Not only is it just a fact of life, but it's actually good. It's beneficial. It's actually allowing us to produce better products and really better patient outcomes faster. It's really helping us to support the orthogonal mission. The autonomy that you get with agentic development, which is really what your sort of leverage is in the business of getting better gains, comes with specification quality and enforceability, right? You have to be specific. It has to be something the agent is going to adhere to and act on. And you have to make sure that the agent is actually going to do the thing and behave itself. And, as we've been discussing this whole time, we're writing specifications in Gherkin, effectively specifications, in a language that all three parties read, right? Where the parties are the stakeholder requesting the functionality, the reviewer who is reviewing that it was implemented correctly, and the agent that's actually going to build the thing. And today that is the Gherkin language. So that's all I've got. Back to you, Randy.
Megan, we're almost out of time. Megan, maybe you want to give some closing thoughts on this or?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. It really touches on my interest in kind of that formal specification, solving that problem of how do we know that the software works as we intend it to work. You can layer in additional constraints, information. For example, if you want to fly under clinical decision support in the US, you can restrict functionality, those kinds of things, or incorporate the 4-part test for that. But this really does help to bring kind of what can be a very complicated process of developing requirements that mean the same thing to everyone. It's a really nice solution that's fairly straightforward to learn and understand. So that really is exciting to me because it really is the cornerstone of understanding what makes really good software that's safe and effective. So I'm very excited about this.
Great. Well, thank you very much. If anybody wants to talk about this further or how Orthogonal may be able to help you on this journey, give us a ring. And if we call you for feedback, please answer the phone. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you on next month's webinar.